Hey guys, happy Saturday. Thanks for stopping by for another episode here at alliseeisW, where we talk about stocks, crypto, and finance. In today's video, we'll be talking about latest updates with ETH as well as BitMine Immersion technology, ticker BMNR. We'll be going through technical analysis, price predictions of ETH and BMNR, how high I believe ETH can really go, along with BitMine immersion technology. Most of you are wondering, is now a time to buy, sell, or hold? What's going to be the price prediction as we head into the month of September, known as volatility month? Or are we going to see it break the norm and start going up after what we've seen with the recent pullback with ETH and BMNR? We'll go through all those details, but if you're new to this channel, so thrilled that you're here. First off, I would really appreciate you smashing the like, subscribing for more related content. Let's get started, guys. Ethzilla posts Wall Street doesn't want the fastest chain. They want a reliable chain. Ethereum has had zero downtime in its entire history. To me, it's a natural selection. Fun strat gentleman and scholar of BMNR. Eatzilla also posts Ethereum vibes just hit different. I mean, just look at this visual. ETH is much newer than Bitcoin. And again, Bitcoin is the mother coin. I mean, it's the most scarce coin out there. But when you compare ETH vibes, it just hits differently. A layer technology and traditional finance really likes the secure backing of Ethereum, and I really do like the technology, and we're beginning to see Wall Street tokenize digital assets, putting their money into the ETH treasury ecosystem. Mr. Crypto posts is once this guy cuts rates, ETH will go to $10,000. So about 2 weeks ago, after Federal Reserve Jerome Powell announced that the Fed is going to cut interest rates, that's when crypto stock market just rocketed, on that Friday. And then since then, it's just been pulling back as we're heading closer towards that time frame for the first rate cut. Things are going to be very bullish from my perspective. The great Matt Spee post is this cycle feels different. Historically, ETH and Bitcoin would break out around the same time, but since November last year, they haven't. In my opinion, it's now time for ETH and altcoins to play catch up with Bitcoin while Bitcoin stays flat or even dips a bit more. So on the top, we're looking at ETH price. On the bottom, we're looking at Bitcoin. So you see around the same time frame when you compare it vertically, it's breaking out together around the same time, as well as in the range of, 2018, 2020 had the same performance. But when you compare Bitcoin on the bottom, it's already broken out since November 2024. In November 2024 for ETH, it was just hovering around that prior resistance, had a pullback. That's where everyone hated on ETH. And then now it's just getting back to the level of the prior resistance while Bitcoin broke out. So now is it true in that ETH will start playing catch up along with altcoins with Bitcoin while Bitcoin stays flat or even dips a bit more? For me, I believe that Bitcoin has forecast of getting up to about 170,000, with ETH having much more potential, even 2x from where it currently is. Crypto Rover poses Tom Lee is to ETH what Michael Saylor is to Bitcoin. So which side are you on? Are you on the ETH side? Are you on the Bitcoin side? Or are you leveraging both? I like both. Truly Bitcoin, there's no second best, but you know what? ETH is gaining a lot of traction and it's getting more modernized, and there's a lot more inflows coming in right now with ETH. Bullish news. Tom Lee said Wall Street is preparing to build its core infrastructure on ETH, calling it the backbone of global finance. And we'd heard from Tom Lee saying that there's a 50% probability that the ETH, overall ecosystem can bypass Bitcoin at one point. So that's very bullish, and only time will tell with his laser sharp red eyes. Cole Grind posts a real post on X. He says, not one of my best moves buying my first BMNR shares at $53, but I'm going to DCA into this one. ETH has a long runway ahead. So where we currently are, from the price of $53 to $43, that's close to 17% bullback Of course, we can't time the market, but time in the market, things will get better. BMNR is like the MSTR of Ethereum. If you believe on the use case of just treasury approach, I think things will go up. And of course, like let's say if you're buying at prices of 53, which I am one of the candidates as well, that's okay. Things will get better. And if you can, DCA is the name of the game. Urkel posts BMNR into the volume gap today and sitting on trend support, going back to the original impulse move. This would be an ideal bounce spot after a failed breakout earlier this week. Otherwise, it opens the door to a flush below. So, where are we going to be headed? Put it in the comments what you think. Are we going to start seeing a breakout of BMNR, or are we going to see a test below $40 before it breaks out? BitMine BMNR posts tomlee, Fundstrat, gentleman, and scholar is the chairman of BitMine. BMNR is the ticker. So Crypto Gucci ETH posts Tom Lee's BitMine Immersion was one of the most mentioned stocks on Bloomberg the past 24 hours. So let's take a look. We got Nvidia open, uh, getting a lot of attraction as well. And look, BMNR is on the list. So that's very bullish. It's definitely one of the top stocks in terms of trading volume. And, just on Bloomberg, a lot of people are talking about BMNR and the use case that Tom Lee has. Let's take a look at the strategic ETH reserve. Obviously, BitMine, they're creating a huge disparity right now. You look at the 30-day change, 180% change. Market cap's growing significantly. In terms of the 1.8 million ETH tokens that they have, that equates to about $7.8 billion dollars. In fact, it was over 8 billion when ETH, got close to 5,000. But where we are right now, things are looking very bullish. Right behind BMNR is Sharplink Gaming, close to 800,000 tokens. But right now, BMNR has, 1 million tokens more than, the competitors down below. Current MNAV 1.13. And, we're seeing a big race with other, e-treasury companies like Digital, Ethzilla in seventh and eighth place with very close numbers. Soon, I think Coinbase, is going to drop down to rank 7, while, either Digital, Ethzilla is going to be catching up. So definitely very bullish. As we look at technical analysis, where we currently are right now on the daily candle, ETH is at 4,376. We definitely saw a nice run up since that news from Federal Reserve Jerome Powell. Around August 20, we saw ETH get down to like close to 4,000, 4,100. And since that announcement, it had a bullish move. One of the biggest, green candles, intraday trading got close to like 4,900. Since then, we've been seeing some heavy volatility, in late phase of August, as we enter September range. So some of the support levels I see that we definitely need to maintain is around the 4,000 range, which we haven't seen ETH hit yet. Although previously that was a prior resistance that we reached, early August. So now, it's definitely a win-win. The prior resistance becomes the support before the next leg up. Level 2 support, let's see if we can even hold 4,200. If we can just have it consolidate here, then we're going to be very bullish as we head into the next week onward. Key thing is we're seeing volume increase as well, and good news is we're hovering above the Ichimoku Cloud, even though the hourly candle price is below it. But this is looking still very good, consolidating before the next breakout session with ETH, altcoins, Bitcoin in the rest of the year 2025. I think, one of the most realistic ranges that I see is somewhere around 7,800 in the year 2025 for ETH. Let's say with ETH going to 7,800, which is my forecast, how high can BMNR really go? I mean, back then we saw that big run up from $4 to 170. RSI topped out at 96. Obviously, it needed to cool off. I suggested, getting in the range around the support at like 29, and it had a big run up to like, close to $70. Definitely there was profit taking there. And, now it's consolidating in this bull flag, but it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when BMNR starts, reversing out of this bull flag. Definitely a candidate for a reversal. But as we look at the relative strength and the MACD, we're seeing some bearish convergence. Obviously, RSI is tapering down at 46. I like seeing that. I want to see, RSI stabilize. In addition, MACD have these, bearish candle formations start dissipating before we start seeing the green candles kick in. But this is all going to be driven from ETH catalyst news along with BMNR having a reversal on the technicals. I think the lowest we can go, perhaps BMNR might retest 40 or below before, and then just wipe out all of those stop losses before we see a reversal, and we're just going to start seeing it climb back up into the 50, 60, 70 range from here on out. But from a long-term scenario, I definitely do think BMNR is going to be one of those stocks that will get into the triple digit range, similar to how MSTR is growing. So we could definitely see BMNR as we head into the rest of 2025. We can get to the high, sub 100s, in fact. So definitely be on the lookout for that, especially with once ETH starts breaking out.
Well, Ethereum differs from Bitcoin. Actually, Bitcoin Ethereum was initially a fork of Bitcoin, by the way, but with an added feature, which is smart contracts. So what they wanted to do on Ethereum was to say, let's use blockchain technology not just to store value, but now to store information. Ethereum is as a smart contract platform actually also has something called the EVM, Ethereum Virtual Machine. So you can run entire programs and conditional contracts on Ethereum. And Ethereum itself is 100% reliable. It has not had a single moment of downtime since inception. It's one of the few blockchains that has never been down. And then if you needed to do more things on Ethereum, you can build what they call layer twos on top of it. So Ethereum is essentially infrastructure that now is catching the attention of two industries. The first is the financial sector. The stable coins became really viral, a breakaway product for crypto. And that's like the ChatGPT moment. There's $250 billion worth of stable coins. The vast majority of those are minted on Ethereum. Then the Genius Act was passed by this administration and this Congress, and that greenlighted the proliferation of stablecoins onto the blockchain. So banks are now building stablecoin products. That Treasury Secretary Bessent thinks that could get to 4 trillion. That's exponential growth, burning gas on Ethereum. And then we have Project Crypto, which is the SEC wanting Wall Street to build on the blockchain. Now, all that collectively, from a Wall Street perspective, is like 1971 for the dollar. And what I mean by that is, in 1971, the dollar went off the gold standard. So in 1971, the dollar became synthetic. And gold was what people bought as a hedge against that synthetic dollar. So you had gold as the trade, and that would be the Bitcoin equivalent. But actually, the synthetic dollar is what created the rails for Wall Street to build all their future products. The futures, curves, derivatives were all because the dollar was a synthetic product. If the dollar was backed by gold, Wall Street would be still a very small business. Well, Wall Street now is going to be building its entire infrastructure onto the blockchain. And the blockchain they're choosing is Ethereum. So this is the 1971 moment where Wall Street is essentially capitalizing on tokenizing the entire world onto a blockchain. That's a huge opportunity. The second story arc benefiting Ethereum, though, is AI, because now we're moving towards an agentic AI world, but with real products. Like AI is principally been trained on like internet and, I don't know, social media, but it hasn't been in the real world because it hasn't ingested us as we've moved and physically moved or even had independent products. That's a vast amount of new information for AI models to ingest and store. But then now you have to be sure that all the instructions being sent back to the robot are proof of the originator. In other words, you need a token. I mean, LLMs use tokens anyways, but now you need like a token that interacts across chains. And that's where AI is going to build on Ethereum because you essentially need what they call proof of human. We need to prove that this lawnmower got a real instruction from another chain or another vendor. And so that is all.
So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed another episode at All I See Is W. If you did, I'd really appreciate you smashing the like, subscribing, turning on the bell notification. I really appreciate it. I'll also be going live tomorrow, so I'd love for you to all join, 3 o'clock Pacific time. Thanks, guys.